Good evening, Tansei, and welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced his nomination for the next Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. If confirmed, Michelle Obonsawin would be the first Indigenous person to sit on the country's highest bench. Trudeau made the announcement on Friday. In a press release, he said Justice Obonsawin is an accomplished jurist with expertise in the areas of mental health, Gladue principles, labor and employment law, human rights and privacy law, and has been a judge of the Ontario Superior Court of Justice in Ottawa since 2017. Obonsawin is a member of the Odanak-Abenaki First Nation. This nomination fills the vacancy created by the upcoming retirement of the Honourable Michael J. Moldaver. A special parliamentary committee hearing on Obonsawin's nomination will be held on August 24th. The Pope's visit last month triggered the memories of many residential school survivors, and the National Survivors Hotline saw an uptick in calls. But so did a BC-based residential school survivors hotline, as their calls doubled during the papal visit. One of their counselors said their work is both hard and necessary, but it's in danger of running out of funding. Amelia Fournier has more.
The papal visit brought traumatic memories to the surface for many residential school survivors. Daisy Elliott of BC-based Indian Residential School Survivors Society, or IRSSS, said the number of calls to their 24/7 hotline doubled in July.
I first and foremost put my work and the support I have for our people first, but I'm human. We're all human.
Elliott is a team lead and part-time hotline counselor for the IRSSS. She is the daughter of a residential school survivor and has worked with survivors for over 13 years. She says the papal visit was hard on her team.
For the two survivors specifically, one dealt with a lot of incoming who were really triggered and re-traumatized by the visit. And the other one was triggered personally from not just the visit, but I think the trauma that was coming in.
Not only that, but Elliott said her team received abusive calls.
There were callers who either just played like a recording of the Bible, so there was scripture being played in the background of the phone. There was upset callers because it's not the church's fault and the church wouldn't do. So those were some of the calls that our staff received.
Staff are instructed to hang up when this happens. Despite all of this, Elliott says she feels supported by the IRSSS. The organization provides an on-staff counselor for hotline operators, and team members debrief regularly to support each other.
To be given or to be trusted with an opportunity to lead a team is something that I don't think I take lightly, but it's something I can't do on my own.
The IRSSS hotline was getting a lot of publicity at the time of the Kamloops discovery.
I think when the 215 hit, we were getting calls internationally as well. So for those who were impacted by the 60 scoop, who were taken out of the country and have no resources like there is here in BC or in Canada, they would call the lines.
She's concerned that the IRSSS hotline isn't getting shared enough anymore, and that the federal government won't extend their funding beyond next March. Minister Mark Miller says that is still undetermined.
The role that these people are playing is absolutely crucial. I think at the confluence of everything that's happened over the last year and the apology that the Pope has provided is, you've seen a lot of demand spike for people that are seeing old wounds reopening that they thought perhaps were closed. We will be there for them, but it's very hard to sort of sit down and quantify at this time.
If anyone wants to contact the IRSSS hotline, call 1-800-721-0066. Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
The Native Women's Association of Canada is joining the growing call for the return of Dawn Walker to Canada. The Saskatoon mother is being held in an Oregon jail on U.S. federal charges related to identity fraud and 2 more charges in Canada. APTN's Leanne Sanders has more.
The Native Women's Association of Canada is calling on the federal government to negotiate the rapid return of Dawn Walker. The organization argues it's in the best interests of all concerned that she be allowed to quickly address the charges of parental abduction and public mischief that she faces in Saskatoon. Association President Carol McBride says the Walker case illustrates the frightening reality many Indigenous women face.
Can you imagine what our sisters go through throughout this country? That horrible word genocide. And that's what all these actions lead up to, genocide.
The association cites the findings of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, which found that violence directed at Indigenous women in Canada is genocide, and that much of that violence is committed by domestic partners. Darlene Rose Okimesim Seacott with Women Walking Together in Saskatoon also said it's important that Walker be returned to the city as quickly as possible.
An extradition request to bring our loved one back to our country around, the support of community and colleagues and friends, and especially the family, because we know what that experience is like in the judicial and justice system.
Both organizations are concerned that officials in the U.S. and Canada will not fully take into account the systemic circumstances involved when Indigenous women believe they're not safe.
This is not a place, a safe place to live as Indigenous women. That's the part I'm going on, and that's the part that I'm going to fight for. That the government starts moving on these calls for action.
Dawn Walker said she fled Saskatoon because she feared for her and her son's safety. She and her son Vincent had been the subject of a week-long search when she was located in Oregon City. Vincent has been brought back to Canada and is with his father. Walker is scheduled to appear in an Oregon court on September 7th. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A 92-year-old former priest was arrested earlier this year in connection to an alleged historical residential school assault. Arthur Massé entered his plea on Wednesday in a Manitoba courtroom. Brittany Guillot has more on that.
A former residential school priest entered a plea of not guilty today in Powerview, Pine Falls, Manitoba. Arthur Massé was charged in June with 1 count of indecent assault. The incident involved a student who was 10 years old at the time. The RCMP say the alleged abuse occurred between 1968 and 1970 at the Fort Alexander Residential School. The allegations of sexual abuse at the institution resurfaced in 2010. Sparking a decade-long investigation involving more than 80 officers who gathered 75 witness and victim statements. Victoria McIntosh identified herself as the alleged victim.
And I just talked to one of my relatives here, and we, our mothers are sisters. So we mentioned, this is for our mothers too. And when they couldn't talk and they can only cry. So I come here as their voice as well.
McIntosh isn't the only person to file a complaint against Massé. Marilyn Corshane says she told authorities about the former priest 15 years ago.
He's not taking responsibility for his actions, and he's not being accountable to this community. And yet he's been here, he was here 40 plus years with our children and our families.
The former priest was absent from the courtroom. Instead, his lawyer phoned in on his behalf.
I think it was, even though I had mentioned in my IAP report that I requested his presence, which is like 15 years ago. He said no. I requested, like I did my day school, and I mentioned him in there again, and then nothing again, and then this statement, again, nothing. So that's 3 times I've tried. So it's not working.
Massey worked in several First Nations communities and residential schools across Manitoba and Ontario. His next court date is set for September 14th in Winnipeg. Brittany Gio, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
New legislation in Manitoba has made it easier to crack down on so-called encampments. 2 have been set up near the provincial legislature, including one set up after the findings of suspected unmarked graves in Kamloops in May 2021. Eviction warnings were issued Wednesday morning to those who have been occupying the north and east sides of the legislative building. Sav Jonesa has more.
This is something that they took away from my ancestors, and they're going to do it again to me.
Flags, tents, gardens, and wood for a sacred fire have been seen on the east side of Manitoba's legislative building since May 2021. The encampment was created in response to the findings of unmarked graves at Canada's former residential school sites. Mary Starr, a residential school survivor herself, has been a fixture at this camp since its inception, finding comfort and healing.
And this is where I come and say my prayers for the little ones that didn't make it home. That's why this camp was started.
On Wednesday, organizers were told that their time here is coming to an end.
Just unexpected. Just officers and the police came here yesterday. Wow, they're gonna do this. They're gonna do this to us.
Police and conservation officers came to tell the camp that they have until noon on August 23rd to leave the premises. Part of their reason is due to new legislation passed earlier this year directly in response to encampments, prohibiting them on the basis of safety concerns for staff and tourists.
5 people came here, 5 police came here, and I think 2 police vehicles came there too. It's like, wow, they're just trying to force us to get out of here.
One of their concerns is of the campers setting fires, something Mary Starr believes is wrong given the ceremonial context.
The sacred fire is not setting a fire. There is a difference. It's a sacred fire, and this is what we do. That's our ways. We come here when we want to say our prayers, and we put our tobacco down, and we say our prayers, and we offer to those little ones that didn't make it home.
A spokesperson for the Manitoba Justice Department says protests and rallies are acceptable on the grounds of the legislative building, but for safety and security reasons, for staff, visitors, tourists, and even other protesters, encampments are not permitted. People here say they will leave once all residential school grounds have been searched and all unmarked graves are found. Until then, Starr says she refuses to leave and will stay until the end.
I'm Treaty 1. This is my territory, and I'm going to remain here. And whatever happens on that day when they come in, I guess whatever, if they use force, then so be it.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time for a short break, but still to come, physics and traditional trapping are part of a new learning camp in Nova Scotia. Welcome back. After a massive landslide devastated part of the Fraser River in BC in 2018, scientists, governments, and First Nations have been working to help salmon pass through that portion of the river to their spawning grounds. Now they say there's been big improvements. Sarah Connors explains.
280,000 salmon have passed through a sonar upstream of the site of the Big Bar landslide on the Fraser River. It's a number First Nations are celebrating.
It's a positive experience whenever there's fish that can return to the spawning grounds.
The Big Bar landslide took place in 2018 on the Fraser River near Lillooet, British Columbia. Debris from the slide created a 5-meter-high waterfall, preventing sockeye and Chinook salmon from reaching their spawning grounds. After years of conservation efforts like trapping and transporting fish by truck past the slide site, the DFO says data shows the salmon appear to be making their way past the slide site to their spawning grounds.
Upwards of 39,000 salmon are passing through the Big Bar area on a daily basis.
So far, 741 fish have been radio tagged for monitoring. Officials say trilateral partnerships between governments and First Nations will be key in helping the salmon survive. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Physics and traditional trapping are part of a new program in Nova Scotia. The Mikmaq land-based learning camp combines science and nature to help youth connect to the land. APTN's Angel Moore has the details.
Indigenous youth learn how to make a traditional trap, 3 sticks and a rock, and they are also learning the physics behind it. Instructor Jack Shu, a mechanical engineering student, says the design of the trap is impressive.
The design was very smart, using only 3 sticks and a piece of wood or a heavy rock. With that minimum amount of material, we can set up a very efficient way to catch prey. Myself, as a mechanical engineering student, I really admire this kind of smart designing.
The height of the trap and the mass of the rock affects how fast the rock will drop, a calculation that determines the speed of the rock falling needed to catch the prey. The 1-week camp, called Two-Eyed Seeing, has 15 youth participating. It combines Indigenous knowledge and Western science. The hope is that these kids will take a serious interest in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Angelo Masking, 15 years old, hopes to return next summer.
It's awesome. It's a lot of fun, and school's starting up soon, so it's like kind of getting back into school a little bit with getting up early and all that, and it's a lot of fun getting to know new people.
Riley Goodwin, 13 years old, is learning new skills.
If you go out, like, trapping and all that, like how we're learning to do it right now, it's pretty fun.
A collaboration with Alnueg, a non-profit organization dedicated to the success of Indigenous communities, and Supernova, a Dalhousie University initiative to promote science, engineering, technology, and math to youth. Holly Griffiths, Director of Education at Alnueg, says,
So it's two-eyed seeing. It's essentially, looking at Western sort of science and using that lens, and then also taking Indigenous traditional knowledge and ways of knowing and using both of those viewpoints to look at the world and to study and to learn. So.
The land-based learning camp is held at Windhorse Farm, about 100 kilometers west of Halifax. With 200 acres of land with an old forest, the youth identify and calculate the age of the trees. Candace Lane, 16 years old, enjoys the outdoors.
Sometimes it can be even better than just the normal school setting, just sitting in a desk all day. Just connecting with like nature and other people.
The rest of the week will include more cultural activities, such as basket making and a water ceremony. Caitlin McPhail, Supernova coordinator, says not all youth know about their culture.
And so this is a really special week for them to be able to come here and have those cultural learning opportunities while being around other youth who are like-minded and who are also here to learn and eager to experience and explore and learn more about their culture and who they are and where their place is.
The hope is youth become interested in a future in STEM and the program offered in communities year-round. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Windhorse Farm, Nova Scotia.
All right, time to step aside one final time. Coming up, a new role-playing game aims to include more Indigenous representation. Welcome back. For a growing number of people, TTRPGs, or better known as tabletop role-playing games, are a fun and interesting way to spend their free time with friends or family. Although for many Indigenous players, representation is a tough thing to find in these spaces. Cashton McLeod explains.
It's a white guy's hobby for the most part.
Meet Connor Alexander, a member of the Cherokee Nation and tabletop game designer.
I can't count how many times I would see games designed by white people for white people with Native or First Nation or Indigenous representational themes strapped onto those games.
Connor is working hard towards providing more Indigenous representation in board game communities.
When I started to feel more comfortable in the industry, working for distribution and building some contacts within the industry and understanding how it all worked, I began to think, you know what? I think I actually have something to contribute here that hasn't been seen in this industry. And I wanted Indigenous folks to feel a sense of optimism and hope in this game.
Connor created Coyotes and Crows, a role-playing game similar to Vampire the Masquerade or Dungeons & Dragons. The twist, however, is that his game takes place in a decolonized history of North and South America.
What I really wanted for my players was a sense of, hey, this is where things branched off from our history, and I want you to strip out that colonialism, but then still hold on to your cultural, if you're Indigenous, hold on to your culture and take what's important from your culture and add it into this world.
Creating such a world wasn't an easy task. When asked how he went about writing the world within Coyotes and Crows, Connor says,
how can I strip colonialism out of this world entirely? I don't want to combat it or deal with it in the game. I don't even want it to be like an opponent in the game. I just want it gone. I want no mentions of the word Columbus. The word Columbus will not appear in my game. I described like a spilled cup of coffee, and somebody said, psst, coffee didn't exist pre-Columbian. There was no coffee pre-Columbian. So it's little things like that that can just slip right underneath there.
In Connor's world, players can take on many challenges and play in all sorts of stories based around their cultures from home.
So you can have that sort of D&D exploration going off into the middle of nowhere and finding a strange creature adventure, or you can have a murder mystery set in downtown Cahokia if you want.
When asked if we could be given a sneak peek at any upcoming expansions, Connor told us a little bit about the stories of the Freelands.
The main thrust of the campaign is 10 new stories for Coyote and Crow written by 10 different Indigenous authors paired up with 10 artists. And I'm really excited about it.
Thanks to Connor, Indigenous players like myself have a game we can call our own. Kasha McLeod, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
If you are interested in Coyote and Crow, you can support them on Backer IT or visit them on their website for more at www.coyoteandcrow.net. Ikilawak Avalak, the wrestler from Nunavut who just won the territory's first ever Canada Games gold medal, is now back in his hometown of Cambridge Bay, and the town rolled out the red carpet to celebrate their champion. There are 1,400 residents of Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, and it is estimated that around 500 of them showed up to give a warm Nunavut welcome. Avalak and some of his teammates got the full Nunavut parade treatment from the airport to the community hall. In addition to being Nunavut's first Canada Games gold, it is also Nunavut's first medal in a Summer Games and the territory's second medal ever at a Canada Games. Once in the community hall, it was time to get all the praise in person that he has been feeling from home. All right, that's all we have for you on this edition of APTN National News Weekend. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. For all of us here, thank you for joining us. Miigwech, and have a great weekend.